Natalie's here.
Hi.
Hey, Natalie. You doing all right?
Yeah.
That's good. I'll wait a couple minutes and see who else shows up. Lily was here in the morning. She said she was going to come back at 1 since she was the only one here. Cyrus here.
I couldn't access the notes that were in for April.
Um, did I email them to you?
Yeah.
It should have asked me to give you access before I sent them. What happened when you tried to open them?
It asked for access, but I just did it like a few minutes ago.
Okay. Can I ask who we is?
Huh?
You said we looked a few minutes ago. Is that like? Oh, I'm trying to figure out who I need to resend and make sure everything's open for.
Oh, me, Natalie. Sorry.
You, Natalie, and
Where is it?
well, let me do this. This might be easier because I got the third block serve up already. Give me a second. Let's see. Recent. Here we go. 4-3, 4-1, 3-30. Insert. Send. Why does it say share with 2 people? Yeah, just send it out again. Right, so we're up to 5, it looks like. I guess we can get started. I know Lily said she saw the notes about Gettysburg. Does anybody else have those or have looked at those?
I have.
Okay. Um, before we get started, does anybody have questions about anything as far as the notes, work, anything?
When are the 45 questions due?
The 45 questions, let me pull it up. Well, let me think. I'm looking at the wrong one. Let's see, today's the 3rd, right? And so the next time we would have met, if we were in a normal situation, would have been the 7th. I'm using that as like a day off. So April 9th is when they're due.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with how we're going to do those online, or do I need to go over that again? Would it help? Yes, no, maybe so.
What did you say?
Do you want me to go over again how we're going to submit the 45 questions since you all are at home and I'm at home?
Do we just like take a picture of them and then send it to you?
Yeah, just make sure the picture is clear. I've had people with dirty phone cameras where I couldn't read what they sent, and make sure you're giving me a picture that's, in one direction. I had somebody send me a bunch of diagonal pictures where like what would have taken 1 page takes like 2 or 3 pages. So, as long as you're taking a head-on shot and the camera is clean, you should be okay.
What if we did it in like Google Docs? Can we add it onto Canvas and send them to you there, or can we just email them to you?
Google Docs is even better. There's no place to because you can send me messages on Canvas. There was a girl in my second block who sent me a message on Canvas and her message was her unit packet. So you can do it that way, I think, also.
Okay.
And I'm gonna probably count that as a quiz grade, just so I can have something in that part of the grade book. That's probably how we're gonna handle it.
Okay.
Anything else? Go ahead and get started on the notes, if that's okay with you all.
Yep.
Okie doke. So the last time we met, we were talking about Vicksburg and how that was one of the turning points of the war, and how Lee had invaded the North. And I gotta stop real quick. There we go. And how Lee had invaded the North, and how Meade had the job of finding Lee and stopping him. So that's pretty much what Gettysburg is about. And Lee's guys stumble into Gettysburg since there is a rumor of shoes in Gettysburg. Meade's men, remember, are just randomly looking for Lee. Some of them find some of Lee's guys, and that's when all the numbers of soldiers start pouring into the town. Gettysburg's not a big town. It's like the size of Welcome up there by North Davidson. So it's not a big town. This battle starts on July 1st, where pretty much everyone's starting to pour people in. The second day of the battle, you have something that looks, that's not what I want. That's what I want. So let me present this real quick. You have something that looks kind of like this, where Lee, on day 2, he is trying to bring his guys around the side of Meade's soldiers. And what you have here is, some people call this a fish hook, because like the blue is kind of shaped like a fish hook. This bottom part wasn't there on day 2. The day 2, they tried to run around the side. All of this is on a hill. Like if you look, I'll blow it up here. You have Cemetery Ridge. And so remember we talked last time about how it's not smart to charge up a hill, right?
Oh, I can't see the picture.
Who cannot see the picture?
Me. Lily.
Okay. Can the rest of you guys see it okay?
Yes.
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 Trying to think. Yeah, and Lily's got her camera on. So I don't know why it would not do that. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. Is there like a troubleshooting thing? Like I can't see something maybe? Turn off caption settings. Microphone, audio, video. Integrated camera, standard def. I'm just trying to figure it out if there's an easy way that something's not working or for some reason. I can't really find it. Help. And that pulls up this.
I don't know. It's like it says Zelman is presenting, but I can't see anything.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I'll try to go back. What I might do is I might just send these as links to you so you can look at them when I'm done, if that might help or not.
That's fine.
Okay. Can the rest of you guys see Cemetery Ridge kind of like in the center of the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talked about how hard it is to charge up a hill into gunfire, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So on day 2, what Lee tried to do is try to go around the side at this part that's called Little Round Top and Round Top. And he almost did it on day 2, but he wasn't able to. And he tried also that same day to come around the other side on Culp's Hill and got thrown back. And so day 2, Lee has lost a lot of guys. Meade has lost a lot of guys. But Lee thinks I got one more chance to win this thing because he thinks he has softened up by killing so many Union soldiers. He thinks that he's taken a lot off of Cemetery Ridge. And so on day 3, you see this thing where it says Pickett, like Pickett Elementary, and he's going to charge across this field, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and break through the lines, and the whole thing by General Meade would fall apart. That's the plan at Gettysburg. And this picture I'm showing you now is of the place where Pickett ran up, and I'm just putting that tab back up. I didn't want to forget about Lily. I want to send that back to her when I get a chance. So I'm going to move these off to the end so I don't forget. All right. So here's this stone wall is where the Union soldiers were at. And can you see, like if you look hard, if you look back, do you see these cars that are sitting back here?
Yes.
Okay. So on the other side of the road from where the cars are at was a wooden fence. And those trees in the very back, that's where Pickett's guys charged from. And that's half a mile away. And you can see there's no trees. It's just open field. You can see them coming at you. And when they get to that wooden fence, they got to crawl through it and crawl over it. And a lot of guys are going to die. And the closer they get, the more these guys die. And so my question to you is, what's going to wind up happening to Pickett's men before they even get up to the top of that hill?
They're gonna die.
Say that louder.
They're gonna die.
Yeah, almost like 95% of Pickett's guys died before they even got to the top of that hill. The 5% who did get there either got killed or captured or whatever. And so, Lee is seeing this off from behind the trees up on another hill. He tells General Pickett, man, this doesn't look like it's going good. Let's bring our guys back. We'll figure out something tomorrow. And Pickett tells Lee, I don't have a division because his guys are all dead. Pickett knows what's happened. This is Lee's biggest mistake of the entire war. Remember, Lee has not had a very one-sided defeat. And so Lee's ego has finally gotten the better of him, and it bites him big time at Gettysburg. And this is the reason why Gettysburg's such a big deal. Lee has now invaded the North twice. He's lost both times, and he's lost tens of thousands of soldiers now. Remember, what is one of the big disadvantages the South has in this war? Question to you guys. Somebody. Hello?
Yes.
Can somebody answer the question? Natalie has joined us. Are you doing okay, Natalie? Or not Natalie, I'm sorry. Marilyn has joined us.
I'm good.
Okay. Marilyn, did you hear the question? Maybe you can help rescue us?
No, can you repeat it, please?
Yes. So the question is, what's one of the biggest disadvantages the South has had in this war?
Which war is it?
The Civil War.
Oh. Let me think. Didn't they have less people because their slaves didn't count as like people?
Yes, that is the biggest single disadvantage the South has. The South starts the war being outnumbered 4-1. So for every Union soldier, or let me back up, for every Confederate soldier I've got here in this hand, you got 4 Union soldiers. So that's not going to end very well, right? And so they're already disadvantaged. And now Lee has invaded the North twice, has lost tens and tens of thousands of troops. And so now Lee is unable to fight on offense anymore, which means he's going to have to do what for the rest of the war? If you don't fight on offense, you fight on
Defense.
correct. And so that's what we're going to get into once we're done with Gettysburg. Another effective Gettysburg was this warm-up assignment that a bunch of you still haven't done. So let me pull that up real quick. Where Lincoln makes this speech, the Gettysburg Address, which everybody made fun of because Lincoln's speech only lasted 2.5 minutes. You had this other guy whose speech lasted for 2 hours. Lincoln, yeah, there's 6 of you all who still haven't done it, and a bunch of you are here in this meeting today. Anyway, so Lincoln basically says, look, you know, a lot of us want to end the war because we've lost so many people, but these people have died for the idea that all men are created equal. And you were fighting a war whether or not that idea can last and be successful. And if we fail in this war, the world's going to look at us and their own people and say, look, see, those dumb Americans over there tried it. Democracy doesn't work. We're not going to do it. And so Lincoln sees this as a test to see whether or not a democracy can survive. And to honor the dead who died for democracy, we need to, you know, look deep down and, you know, do what we need to do and continue the war to honor them. And when we do this, we're going to have this idea where we can have a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what this war is about. And that in Gettysburg, you know, Lincoln uses as a reminder of that. So now that Gettysburg is gone and Grant has won out in Vicksburg, what you're going to have is Grant becomes the new general-in-chief of the Army. He's promoted to that rank because Lincoln now knows he has found somebody who can do the job and who will not give up. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
All right. Let's see, Natalie. I'm just checking something out real quick. Bear with me. Natalie, I fixed your grade. I put yours in somebody else's spot. All right. So now what you're going to have is 1864, this problem where Grant is put on a mission to capture Richmond. why is Richmond such a crucial goal for General Grant?
Didn't Richmond have a railroad and it was going to block the railroad?
Well, Richmond is the key manufacturing center for the South. Richmond is one of the biggest cities in the South at the time. They have the most amount of factories in the South. They also have the most amount of railroads. There are actually 6 railroads that come together, not in Richmond, but just to the south of it in Petersburg. And so Richmond and Petersburg are tied together as far as the importance of the war. So you're not wrong, but there is a political factor that we're missing. There's a political reason that Richmond is crucial to the Civil War that we're missing.
Okay.
So can anybody figure out what Richmond is politically?
Was it like a capital?
It was. It was the capital of the Confederacy. And most of the time, if you can capture the enemy's capital in a war, what happens?
You beat them?
Correct. And so Grant promises Lincoln, I'm going to push on to Richmond and I'm not giving up until I take Richmond. Now, he had to leave the West, so who Grant puts in charge is this guy. This guy, General William T. Sherman. Looks like a guy not to be trifled with. And we'll get back to Sherman in a little bit. Oh, I tried to show them to you, but I didn't present that. So let me do that real quick. Here goes Sherman, and here goes Grant's campaign that summer. Now, if you look, in Lily, remember, I'll give this to you when we're done. You see near the top of the map what city?
Fredericksburg?
Correct. And Fredericksburg is exactly halfway between Washington, D.C. to the north and Richmond to the south. And so Grant starts by going straight down. He's not going to do this okey doke thing like McClellan did, where he went down the Potomac and around the back. Grant's like, I'm going to go straight at it like, a knife through butter. And so he goes down to Fredericksburg, and he is stopped at the Wilderness here on the left. Can you guys make out these dates?
No, it's too small for me to see.
I'm sorry?
It's too small for me to see.
Okay. So it says May 5th through 7th of 1864. That is the Battle of the Wilderness. And so for 3 days, Grant and Lee fight it out there. And Grant can't win. Lee is dug in too hard. Lee knows that if Grant can get around him, which is what I'm trying to show you with my little mouse here, if Grant can get around Lee, what's going to happen? Anybody? No guesses?
Will they be able to capture the next town?
Well, what's the big town that Grant wants to take? Remember we just went over?
Richmond?
Correct.
Richmond.
Correct. So if Grant can get around Lee, Richmond's going to fall. The war's going to be over. So do you think Lee is happy to think about that possibility?
No.
No. And the good thing about Lee from his perspective is Lee knows all the shortcuts all the back routes. He knows the faster way to get back in front of Grant to block him. Because this is what has to happen. Lee has to block Grant no matter what, or the war is over. And so Lee pulls down and gets back in front of Grant at this place that's too small. Most of you probably can't see. This is a place known as Spotsylvania Courthouse. And Lee and Grant throw down again for 2 weeks, May 8th through May 21st. They're fighting it out all day, every day for 2 weeks. That's the longest battle of the war up to that time. Eventually, Grant is able to wear Lee down, but Grant can't beat Lee, so he goes around him another time. Lee has to block him again. You guys see a pattern starting to emerge here?
Yeah.
Okay. And so they have round 3 at this little place where these rivers come together, the North Anna River, May 23rd through 26th. They throw down again. Grant goes around. Lee has to block. And you have this warm-up assignment that you had a couple of days ago. That was the cold. Oh, shoot, that's not what I want. I got to stop sharing for a second. That's where you had the Cold Harbor warm-up that, let's see, yeah, still 6 people need to do, but all of you all have done it. So that's good. So this Cold Harbor warm-up that y'all did, what was your impression when you saw that picture for Cold Harbor?
Disgusted.
Yeah, it was. Grant charged into Lee's guys, I think 4 different times in one afternoon, knowing that he was going to get his guys killed. But if I put this back up here, you might be able to figure out why Grant did what he did. Grant is criticized for Cold Harbor more than any other battle that he has ever fought in. I'm putting my mouse over Cold Harbor so you guys can see it moving around. Do you guys see how close that is to Richmond?
Yeah.
It's so close, it's like from the high school to the community college. And so you can even see like the tall buildings in Richmond, like the church steeples, with binoculars from Cold Harbor. And so Grant is like, he's like fired up. He's like, man, if I can just punch through somehow, I can end the war today. And, you know, a lot of people think, hey, if I end the war today, no one will die tomorrow. And the longer the war goes, the more people die. So I'd rather have one big bloody battle today if it'll save me more battles. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Grant's thinking. But it doesn't work. And so Grant swings down across Richmond and around Petersburg. Excuse me. Because what you have left are these red lines that go around Richmond and around Petersburg. And so it looks like he's given up attacking Richmond, but he hasn't. It's a lot like that battle he fought in Mississippi. What battle was that again? The big turning point we talked about a week ago? Did a warm-up assignment started with a V?
Battle of Vicksburg.
Yes, ma'am. Oops, I'm trying to do emojis. Nothing. There we go. So it's the same idea. Remember, Vicksburg, Grant laid siege to it, where a lot of you ladies figured out that your siege is when you don't attack the city, you surround the city. So that city has to use up its food, use up its ammo, and so every day it gets weaker and weaker. It's like a wet sponge, and you leave it out to dry in the sun, it shrinks, it's less flexible, it's easier to attack as an army because it's running out of everything. And so Grant's going to do the same thing to Richmond and Petersburg at the same time. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's where Lee and Grant find themselves from the summer of 1864, because you look at the dates on that map. You have June of 1864, and one of your homework assignments that was due today lasts all the way up until April of the next year. So that's 10 months. I mean, that's crazy, a 10-month long siege you're going to have to deal with. Sherman, on the other hand, is fighting in the West, right? And so Sherman decides to attack Atlanta, which is where, guys?
Georgia.
Correct. And so he attacks Atlanta. That is one of the big supply centers of the South. He takes Atlanta, and then he wants to go on a march to the sea. And everybody thinks Sherman has lost his mind. I mean, it kind of makes sense because you look at Sherman, he looks like his mind's already gone. He has like a crazy look to him. But Sherman's like, hey, I'm going to go through Georgia and tear it up like you see on this illustration. What are some of the things you see in this picture as far as destructive activity?
Fire.
What's being burned?
I can't tell.
Any other people can see? Maybe they can guess.
A house?
Might
Maybe a
be
church?
might be a house. Does this kind of look like farmland to you guys in the background?
Yeah.
Kinda.
Well, you got like a big house here that I'm trying to wave over. And then you've got like empty land over here that might be used for crops or something. So I'm guessing this is a farm. So if this is the house, they're probably
barn.
barn, that's what my guess is. If you burn a barn, you're going to burn up any crops that are being stored in the barn. You're going to either take the animals that are inside or kill them there. Which would damage the economy of the South, right? Remember, how is the South trying to raise money?
Crops.
And what crop in particular?
Cotton.
Correct. If you look closely on the right-hand edge, there's like this little thing of, it looks like a cart full of cotton on it. So you have soldiers who are probably either going to take that with them or destroy it so the South can't sell it once they leave. They're not staying in this little place. They're going to destroy what they have and move away closer and closer to the ocean. So what else are they destroying in this picture? Besides the barn?
Railroad.
Correct. And why would they want to do that? What's the point of tearing up railroad lines, guys?
The goods can't
They
be
can't
transported.
Correct. Goods and soldiers can't be transported. They would often take the metal parts of the rail lines, they would heat them up and then bend them around trees or other objects so they couldn't take the rails and lay them back down after they left. And then in the very bottom right corner, what do you see? Like right here.
Guns?
That's the bottom left corner.
They're slaves.
Yeah. And so what is Sherman going to try to do with all the slaves that he finds?
Take them.
Capture them?
Yeah, that's exactly. He's going to try to take them with him. And, that way when they leave, those slaves can't be used to fix the damage and keep on, going with their economy. So what this is, this illustration is showing a new type of warfare that Sherman is going to come up with, known as total war, where you take all the things that make the enemy keep going in the war and destroy it or take it. That's what Sherman's doing in the South. Does that kind of make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. The last bit of the notes before we wrap up for today. Lincoln is running for re-election. While all this is going on in 1864, Lincoln thinks he's going to lose because of all the mounting, dead and people getting tired of the war. Lincoln actually says to one of his friends, I think I'm going to be beaten. If things keep going the way they're going, I'm going to be badly beaten. If you look at the map here that I'm presenting, who is Lincoln going against?
McClellan.
Who was McClellan? We've talked about him before.
Was he a general?
He was. He was the general that Lincoln did what with twice?
Fired?
Correct. And so McClellan, which I think I warned you about, McClellan made this personal and said, I'm going to get back at him. I'm going to run for president and I'm going to win this thing. Okay. And he said that if he wins, that he's going to negotiate with the South and give them what they want. And at this time, what does the South want?
Slavery.
Not only that, but they're fighting a war to not only protect slavery in their 11 states, but what else are they trying to do at this point? To become their own
Country.
country. And so that's what Lincoln is worried about. If Lincoln loses to McClellan, then the North's going to lose the war because McClellan's going to basically surrender. But look at what happens on the map. Does McClellan win or does he lose?
Lose.
Is it a close?
No.
No.
Is it close?
No.
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 What have we talked about the last few minutes that would make the people in the North say, man, I ain't voting for McClellan. What a loser this guy is.
He got fired twice.
Not only that, what's happening in the war by November of 1864?
They're winning?
They are. Why would you elect a guy to give up when you're winning a war? Does that even make sense?
No.
No. So McClellan gets his butt kicked. Why are these shades? Why are these states in yellow not participating?
They're the South.
Yeah, they're the Confederates. Okay. Just a quick reminder, why are these places in gray not voting?
They weren't states yet?
Correct, and you have to be a state to vote for president. Very good. All right. So Lincoln wins re-election, and so what winds up happening is Grant finally breaks through and is able to capture Richmond the first couple of days of April of 1865. And so Grant has to run away from him. Or not Grant. Lee has to run away from Grant. And Grant tells Lincoln, hey, I'm going to chase Lee down because if I can capture Lee or wipe Lee out, what are all the other Southern soldiers going to do at that point?
Give up.
Correct. So Lee is on the run. Grant chases him for almost a week and then is finally pinned down at Appomattox Courthouse. So you always want to know your like what battle started the war. That's the Battle of Fort Sumter. What battles are your turning point battles? That's Vicksburg. That's Fredericksburg. And where did the war end? And the war ended at Appomattox Courthouse. And this is an illustration of the surrender ceremony at Appomattox Courthouse. Grant, of course, on the left, Lee on the right. Of course, if Grant and Lincoln had wanted to, what could they have done with Lee and his army right there on the spot?
Killed them.
Yeah, could have killed them or at least arrested them for treason. You know, they have fought against their own country. They've killed other Americans to try to get rid of the government in the South. But does Lincoln and Grant do that? Do they do that to Lee and his guys?
No.
No. Any guesses as to why?
Maybe they wanted to show they were like forgiving.
Okay, that's a big part of it. By showing the South that they are going to forgive them, a lot of people are going to have the attitude that General Lee had after the surrender, and that was one of y'all's homework questions earlier this week. What did Lee do with the rest of his life after the surrender, since the North was for being forgiving toward them?
Did he try and like pay them back? Like be nicer to them?
Yeah, in a way, basically, he told anybody who was around him or interacted with him that the war was over, that you can't really have harsh feelings toward the North because the war is over, that we're not Northerners and Southerners, that we're all Americans and we're all united together as Americans. And a lot of Southerners followed that lead because Lincoln forgave them. He's like, look, you know, your idea wasn't really a good one. This is why we fought you, but we know why you did what you did. A lot of you guys, remember, never owned slaves. A lot of you guys, you know, fought for your homes and that kind of thing, and we're not going to punish all of you because of, you know, what Jefferson Davis and other people did. And so by Lee accepting that leniency, that's going to get a lot of the South on that same way. Whereas if Lincoln had done the opposite, okay, like if Lincoln said, okay, I'm going to arrest all these mofos, they're a bunch of traitors, they're going to hang from a noose, and they're going to get what they deserve. The South would want revenge. The South would be upset. The South would say, okay, well, let's get our act together and fix the damage, and we'll fight them again, okay? And one of the homework questions that you guys were supposed to do today was to look at this graph on the last page of the chapter and realize that the Civil War was what place did it have in all of American history? Does anyone know the graph I'm talking about? Hey, Lily's showing it. Yeah, Lily's pointing to it. Very good. All right. So that graph shows all the Americans who have died in every war we've ever fought. And which war dominates that graph?
Civil War?
Correct. It's bloodier than every other war this country has fought in put together. You know, everybody thinks how bloody World War II was, and it was bloody. It was very bloody. but it's not even close to the Civil War. Because in World War II, you got Americans killing Nazis, you got Americans killing Japanese, you got Americans killing Italians, but in the Civil War, you have Americans killing other Americans. And the medical technology was awful in the Civil War. I mean, that was part of your reading you're supposed to do. And, I asked you guys last week about that, and you guys said you were good with it. But remember how bloody those hospitals were. Remember how dirty and nasty they were, and how many people died, not from the gunshot wounds, but from their treatment at these hospitals. And you have these new weapons, and the medicine's not keeping up with. And so nobody who's got any sense wants another civil war right after this civil war. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So this is why Lincoln tells Grant and his cabinet and Congress, we have to forgive the South. We have to go easy on them so we don't have anything like this ever again. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Okay. That's going to set a lot of your backstory for Unit 7 that we're going to start once we get back from spring break. So don't forget that. I mean, I got 6 people here. I wish I had at least 10 or 11 people here so we would, be good on that. So the war is over. Lincoln, for the first time in his presidency, starts to relax. He goes to a theater a few days after the war is over. And what happens to him?
Assassinated.
He gets killed.
He is killed. Does anyone know any of the backstory on John Wilkes Booth or anything like that?
No.
John Wilkes Booth was one of the most famous actors in the United States at the time. He had performed in that theater many times. And so when he killed him, he told the security guard, hey, I want to shake hands with Lincoln. Security guard said, sure, go right ahead. And so he gets into the box where Lincoln is very easily. Let me try to do this one more time. There we go. And comes up behind Lincoln in the box with a very small pistol and is able to shoot him in the back of the head. Booth, who looks like that, so he's got a pretty easily a face you can remember easily. And so Booth, there's a military officer sitting to the right of Lincoln, and he struggles with Booth, and Booth stabs the army guy with a knife, and so then he jumps over the railing of the box, falls to the stage, holds the dagger up over his head, and yells "Sic Semper Tyrannis," which is the Virginia motto, which shows that he is a supporter of the Confederates, and he's which means this is what happens to traitors. And he broke his leg when he jumped off onto the stage, and so he hobbled off. He got on a horse that was waiting out back. He took off into the night. The guards didn't know what was going on. They let him go through. It took him like 2 or 3 weeks to find Booth, chase him down, catch him. He resisted arrest. They had to shoot him and burn him alive at the same time. That was pretty dramatic. But he didn't do this by himself. He had friends that helped him with this. And the reason he wanted to kill Lincoln was a day or two after Lee had surrendered, there was this big party at the White House lawn where Lincoln said, hey, I'm glad the war is over. Let's go easy on the South, but we have to let African Americans have the right to vote if they fought in the army. And that infuriated Booth. He said that means N-word citizenship, and that's the last speech Lincoln's ever going to make. And so this is when he decided Lincoln has to die, and his friends were going to help him with that. one of his friends was supposed to kill the vice president that night, but he chickened out. Another one of his friends was supposed to kill the Secretary of State that night, and he got to the Secretary of State, stabbed him in the neck, but he survived. So this was like the only legit, everybody knows it was a legit conspiracy to destroy the government of the United States. So that's kind of like the end note of the war, if that makes any sense. So you have three big things now that the war is over. The South is in ruins. That's going to have to be rebuilt, which is why Unit 7 is called Reconstruction. Slavery is over. They passed an amendment right before Lincoln died that was sent out to the states that said slavery is illegal everywhere forever, to include the border states. That's going to be the 13th Amendment. And then the federal government is stronger from that point onward. Nobody's ever going to seriously talk about seceding from the United States and form their own country ever again. Does anybody have any questions about anything we've gone over today?
Were the security guards punished?
Let's see. The Lincolns, like the guy who let Booth up into the theater.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he was punished or not, to be honest. This is before you had a Secret Service like you have now. A lot of the reason you have a Secret Service is because of the Lincoln assassination. They just had private security guys protecting Lincoln in the theater. There was the guy who let Booth escape from Washington, D.C. got punished because he was in the military. And the military had given orders, don't let anybody out of D.C. without a higher person's permission. And so Booth made up a story to get out of town, and the Army, I think it was Army, the Army soldier believed the story, let him go through, and I think he got court-martialed. But I don't think he was, imprisoned or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
Anything else? All right, if nobody has anything else, today is Friday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next Friday is spring break. Trying to think. Would it mess any of you six who are here up if instead of not meeting next week, if we had like maybe a 3:00 Thursday meeting instead?
That's fine.
And it'd only be one day's worth of notes, so we would probably only meet like 15 or 20 minutes max.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll email everybody as soon as we get off of here today, so we can get as many people to come next Thursday as we can. I think they also said, and I'm not totally sure yet, but right before this class started, we had a department meeting using Google Meet, just like I'm doing with you guys. And two of the administrators were there, and it's looking like if you know anybody who's in our class who has internet issues, who does things on paper, who needs to pick up new packets, you can get those next Thursday, it looks like. I'm not sure of all the details yet. Anything else? Yes, no, maybe so.
No.
No.
All right. I'll go ahead and see you guys next Thursday at 3. If you want to do office hours or individual one-on-one stuff, you can pop in at 3 o'clock on Tuesday as well. All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
You too.